Chair lays out on third reading House Bill 19. Sorry. The clerk will read the bill.
HB19 by legislative relating to procedure, evidence, remedies, and civil actions.
The chair recognizes Mr. Leach to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, this is the commercial vehicle bill that we passed yesterday. With that, I move passage.
Chair recognizes Ms. Davis to speak in opposition to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I want to first commend all of those legal scholars that got together and spent numerous hours trying to make this bill better. I think we show when we get in a room and start trying to figure out things, we can come together and come up with a better product. But I want to talk about this bill a little bit more, because what it did is we fixed how to have a legal fight, but we didn't fix how to make Texas and Texans safer. We didn't deal with how do we improve the quality of life for Texans so they can feel comfortable driving on our roads and know that we put all the precautions in place to ensure that Texans will be safe and can move around. And I think it's important that we talk about the fact that there are many of us who got bombarded with calls and talked about the responsibility of what this will do to small businesses and that insurance rates are going up, but not one time during the hearing did we hear from the insurance industry talking about why insurance rates are going up, rather just assuming it was because of litigation. I want to talk about the corporate responsibility. We get countless communications talking about being socially responsible and corporately responsible. And I want to ask those corporate leaders if they thought about what this bill doesn't do for consumers and for the folks who are driving on our roads. It's unfortunate that most of the discussion and debate over the few months with regard to HB19 has been spent on how we fight and what civil practice procedures are going to be used for the fight. We never talked once about the lives we could save and how do we save lives. And I think that's where I want to just talk just briefly about the notion that the government ought to be for and by the people. And I know all of us reflect on occasion and talk about government for the people, by the people. And we endure ourselves to the comments that the 16th president made with regard to this American idea. But I want to challenge you to look a little bit further, because that's not where it originated. It actually originated from Theodore Parker, who was a socialist reformer speaking at an anti-slavery convention in 1850. That's where those principles came from. And it's in 1850 that we thought about the principles of government for the people and by the people. And so when I think about HB19, again, I commend the scholars to talk about how you fight in court. But I don't want us to ever lose sight that there are people are the reason we're going to be in court. And what did we do in this bill to protect them? What did we do in this bill to make a difference for the quality of life for folks that have to drive our freeways and highways? And as important as it is for us to move our commercial products, it's equally important that we create a Texas that's safe. And so I don't think we ought to be satisfied with what we've done. We need to recognize that we've left some pieces of this legislation for the people out, because it never was about how do we make Texas and Texans safer. And I think that's a responsibility we all have to be responsible for. So members, I'm going to vote no on this bill, because I want us to do government for people. I want it to be by the people, but I want to be for the people. And nowhere in this bill, nowhere in our discussions do we ever talk about how do we make Texas safer. We didn't talk about the possibility of lowering the speed rates, the possibility of some hours that might be more conducive to the big trucks traveling. We didn't talk about any of those kinds of things that would impact people. We only talked about how do you fight in court. And so this really is a lawyer's bill, which is why yesterday the lawyers, and I applaud them in their efforts, came together to figure out how they were going to fight the rules of engagement. And while I don't know which one of them feels like they won, I can tell you for sure I don't think the people won, because we didn't talk about them in one instance. And so I encourage you as members to think about whether you vote for or against it. You've not done your justice for the people, so I would encourage you to step back and maybe for once make a vote that says, I care about whether or not Texas is safer for the people, and tell our corporate leadership, don't be corporately responsible some of the time. The customers, the consumers, that's who made them who they are. So we got to protect them. And so I would just ask members to really think about your vote. And I'm going to ask you to vote no, because I think the people deserve more than this.
Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Rosenthal,
Does the lady yield for a question?
does the lady yield?
Yes.
She yields.
Madam Davis, I do really appreciate what you just said, and I'd like you to reiterate how does this bill address in any way the safety our safety traveling on roads in our state?
Representative Rosenthal, I sit through the hearings as vice chair of the committee that was never part of the conversation to look at what could we do to also make it better. How do we make it safer? That was not part of the conversation, and I think that's why the bill is flawed in its regard for how we improve the quality of life for Texans and make them feel safer.
Thank you. And I don't know if you're aware, I live in a pretty large metropolitan area. We got a lot of trucks and other types of commercial vehicles come through there. And I will ask if you're aware that sometimes those commercial vehicles present quite a danger to other drivers on the road. Would you agree with that?
I agree with that.
If we take away liability from their companies, if we make it harder to sue them, do you think that will improve their driving habits, or will it embolden bad behavior?
In fact, Mr. Rosenthal, I'm glad you mentioned that. I think one of the challenges is to make sure that we never lose sight that when we pass legislation that does not try to perform or inform folks of what the bad side of the legislation is, that we miss an opportunity. We miss an opportunity to say to them, you're part of the solution, don't be part of the problem. You can be part of the solution. And reinforcing that would be to reinforce legislation that says you have responsibilities and not let them off the hook, shift responsibilities to individuals. We've got to be better to the people of the state of Texas. We applaud ourselves and congratulate ourselves about the great state that we created. But we want to make sure it's great for all citizens, and that's what troubles me with this legislation.
I could not agree more. Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Rosenthal.
I move to have Representative Davis's comments as well as our exchange reduced to writing and entered in the journal.
You've heard the motion. Any objection? Chair hears none. So ordered. Chair recognizes Mr. Moody. Chair recognizes Representative Leach to close.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, last night I was the only one standing in between you and dinner, And right now, I'm the only one standing in between you and home. And so let me make this brief and to the point. This process with House Bill 19 for many, many months has been a collaborative process. We have invited all stakeholders to the table. I'm so proud of our committee. Vice Chair Davis played a key role in that, and many of you for helping us craft this piece of legislation that is aimed at making our civil justice system in Texas, every single courtroom in every single county, more open, transparent, accessible, and to create a level playing field for every single litigant in Texas. And I believe that we've arrived at a good piece of public policy that each of you can support. Members, we have a problem in this state, and this bill is designed to be laser focused to address that problem. The increase in lawsuits that we're seeing in Texas, commercial vehicle lawsuits, members, is actually not driven by accident severity. Get this, fatality collisions since 2008 have increased 4.9%, yet the number of lawsuits has increased 118%. 118%. This is a problem, and I fear that if we don't do anything this session, within the next 2 years, we're going to have thousands of commercial vehicles driving on our roadways without commercial vehicle insurance, and that is not safe for the people of Texas. Thank you for your work on this. This bill is a strong piece of public policy that we can and should support. With that, I'm happy to.
Mr. Speaker. Mr. Moody, for what purpose? The gentleman yield for a couple questions. The gentleman yield for questions.
Yeah, I'm happy to.
Thank you, Mr. Leach. And you have already made the point that people are antsy, so I will be very short. But want to echo exactly what you just said in your close, which is number of people at the table, lots of discussions. You and I have had multiple discussions about this bill, and clearly, would I like other things to be included? I think that's fine, but I don't get to dictate that. And you brought a broad group of people to the table to talk about this, and I commend you for doing that. And I think, you know, the way you laid this out and the way that you've closed today has really cemented that those people at that table came up with something that works. And so we get to do our work in the House, and we know that this bill travels across the building. And I just want to be able to protect the work of the people at that table. And so I just wanted to ask if you're willing to work with us to make sure that all those discussions, all that work, all those many hours are maintained to the best of your ability.
Yes, absolutely. Right. Speaker Moody, you have my commitment on that.
Thank you, sir.
Yes. Thank you, members. I move passage and would request your favorable support of House Bill 19.
The question occurs on final passage of HB19. This is a record vote. The clerk will ring the bell. Show Mr. Johnson of Harris voting no. All members voting. There being 81 ayes, 49 nays, HB19 is finally passed.